One key difference about, say, living in Europe, for example, versus Africa is that to a large extent, you can estimate, you can plan, and you can follow things through. The system and the infrastructure allows you to do that to a large extent. It's not perfect, but it works. Whereas
Yeah.
back home, you have limited information, resources, and just unforeseen circumstances that you have no idea where and how it's going to come.
The key question that every one of us who is living abroad or every one of us who intend to move abroad is, how do I want to give back to my own country? And that
Yeah.
starts by the little contribution that you want to make. Intellectually, you could create a small focus group where you are giving mentorship or advising young people on how they can do sustainable migration, for example, or on
Yeah.
how they can develop their skills. We think of the process, but what is the needed change that we want to gain? So universities must begin to adapt their own curriculum such that they are responding to the needs that we have and not just training just individuals who are filled with knowledge but without skills. So we need to be able to readapt those perspectives in terms of formation that we offer. And that's the only way I think that we can solve the knowledge gap, the skill gap in our country to be able to develop. And when we create those enabling environment, then we can have more people who wants to come.
Hi, everybody. Very good morning to you. Today is a special day for us. We have Richard joining us live from Nigeria and my co host Mike, who's also based in Nigeria. We're going to be talking about brain drain or brain gain. What is it exactly for Africa? And today, I think we would start with special stories about, ourselves, where we are today, why we are in the locations where we are today. But more importantly, what do we see about this topic of brain drain or brain gain? For me personally, I feel it's something that people have to talk about more often and align themselves with it because you could just go on about life doing things without necessarily knowing the impact it's having on your society in the country or on the continent. So this is just one amongst many other conversations around this topic. Before I proceed, I'd like my co-host Mike from Nigeria to let us know what he's expecting today, and then Richard will also give us a brief intro, and then we get into the conversation for today.
Yeah, as always, thank you so much, Michael. It's a very interesting topic. Just this week, recently, the president was in Tokyo, he was in Japan, he was in Brazil, and he was telling Nigerians abroad to come back home. Come back home and let's build this economy. I'm doing a great job here. You guys come back home, bring back your skills and everything. So, do you want to come and join us there? I don't know whether Richard is back in Nigeria following the president's call. Maybe we're expecting Mike to return home very shortly. So,
I
I
didn't
don't
know
know.
that. Richard answered the president call and did not tell me. That's not nice.
I wish I was actually answering the call, but no, I'm not yet here to answer the call. Of course, if it's substantial, I would answer at some point if the call is substantial. And I think we get to get into the view of the discussion, how substantive these political declarations are, and what are the we that comes with them. But indeed, yes, I'm not here to answer the call yet. I'm here to stay with my family from
The
the
answer,
beautiful greenery of my beautiful town of Otukpo. So yeah, the Texas of Nigeria, where we all have some history from the two mics and I. So I'm here to enjoy the fresh air and all the good things around here. So yeah,
but
yeah,
we've answered this call of the president before. Each of us here, after our first degree, the bachelor's degree, we answered this call. But what happened?
absolutely,
You know,
absolutely.
and that call
Yeah,
was so short, and I don't even remember what I did back then because everything
yeah.
was, boom,
Now, the thing is, it's not even answering the call; it's us making the call. We made the call. You have us, and they're saying no, 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 no. All they put on conditions that are not very welcoming, and people, on the other hand, because they want better situations, they want better conditions, they decide to go abroad or something like that. I mean, everyone who goes abroad has his or her stories and something that comes around it. But yeah, Mike, you're completely right that we have answered this call before, and we continue to answer. Young people here and there continue to answer this call. But is the country ready to pick up the call? Uh, young people continue to make the call, but are they ready to
yeah.
pick up the call? That's where the problem is.
But the president did not get to Europe anyways. If he was touring over the world, I didn't see him in Europe or never heard. The last time I checked, was the Chancellor of Germany going to Nigeria to negotiate skilled workers coming to Germany from Nigeria. So could you tell us a bit more about that, Mike? What the president's intention actually is? Like, was he going to speak to Nigerians living abroad to come back home? Just give us the details, please. Maybe this would be a good place to start from.
The president's trips abroad is always about going to attract foreign direct investment. Basically, that's what it's all about, to go and attract businesses back home. I stand to be corrected, it has not been very fruitful, but because I don't know, it appears the destination has not been very promising in terms of the business environment and our inconsistent policies because of the challenges of repatriation and all the other realities of ground. So the trips are there, making all these travels, but we've not been able to really attract the foreign direct investment. Other African countries, I think we are about fourth or seventh on the list in terms of foreign direct investment amount that has come into Africa and the distribution to countries. Where you compare countries like Egypt, the North African countries, even Ghana, and all that. So I don't know why the president is calling you at this time.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know because thing is about somehow again, as I mentioned, when you make these declarations, it has to be followed with concrete political will and conditions on ground to allow for those foreign direct investment to come in. I mean, you and I are not oblivious to the fact that there are many security situations in Nigeria that scares away a lot of people. Even for us who are Nigerians, when we want to come back home, there's a lot of people who calls to us and say you have to be careful. There are places you cannot go and things like that. As a Nigerian, you are already scared to go to your own home. How much more a foreigner who wants to invest his resources or her resources in your country?
Now, just to provide some perspective
So
again,
that
Michael, why we call it either brain gain or brain drain because it's like a double-edged sword. Now, based on statistics, right, from the University of Lagos,
confirm.
University of Ilorin, I think you finished from there, Buffalo universities and all of that, on the average, about 45% of their lecturers have resigned and moved abroad. So Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Europe and America, North America and the rest. So they've moved. Also from the Medical Association of Nigeria, a total of about 75,000 doctors have been registered. But as we speak, we have about 25,000 to 30,000 here, about serving a population of over 200 million people. Based on WHO record, it is supposed to be a doctor to about 600 patients. But as we speak, in Nigeria and most parts of Africa, it's about one doctor to between 3,500 to 10,000 patients. This is made worse when you go to rural areas with limited access. So, which brings about a medical emergency, if you want to say. So, when you look at it, and then we also look at the side of our remittances from all of you guys there, building the business bridges, diplomacy making it possible, putting pressure on government to influence certain policies, and all the other benefits which you also bring. So, but when you look at it, like the question rightly said in the caption, how much is too much? I think that's the main thing here.
It's a good question. It's a good question. How much is too much? I mean, every country does need skilled workers. Every country does need skilled personnel and experts, and every country needs to provide the condition necessary for those skilled personnel to be able to exercise their skills. You talk about doctors. I mean, if I'm a doctor and I have to work in a developed countries, I don't have to worry about resources. I don't have to worry about equipment to be able to treat my patients. Here, we consider doctors as lifesavers, but those doctors need medications. They need instruments to be able to perform operations. If they cannot get it and someone loses his life, they would say, the doctor did not do his job well. But no, the doctor did his job well, but he doesn't have the resources, the materials necessary to be able to do that job well. And people don't even mind lynching that doctor for not performing, for not saving the life of their own brother. They have forgotten that the life of their brother is not in the hands of a human being. There are materials that are needed to do that. So when you find yourself in such a condition, that's one. And then two, what the doctors there, I know of many doctors who go on begging. I mean, they cannot fund or they fund their own charges because I mean their salary is so meager, and so they have to jump from many hospitals to the others. They create their own hospital. I know that in Nigeria, we say that the doctors they focus more attention in their private hospitals than they do in the public hospital.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but there are explanations, right? It's not like I justify those explanations, but it does exist that the conditions that are put in place are not conducive enough for people who are skilled to exercise fully their expertise. And so they always tend to look for better alternative or better conditions where they can exercise it. And migration seems to be one of those. Yes, how much is too much? I think in any case it's too much. But then we cannot negate the necessity of brain exchange, or how do you call it? Intellectual exchange, because this enriches the capacity of a country. What I know now for living abroad, I wouldn't say I would not know if I was living here. Not because they are more intelligent than us, but because I've been able to cross check and cross interface the different competencies that I have with other expertise over there, that I'm able to now filter out what is important and what can be relevant to my country. And so each time I have this new expertise, I want to see it replicated in my country, and I want to bring it back. And this is why I come home as often as I can, you know. But then we cannot close the door to those exchanges. It is what happened after that leads us to the question of how much is too much. I mean, we can deep in forward on that angle, but I think, yeah, those exchanges are necessary for intellectual capacity development, for the development of the country and the people. But then we need to see what is the return part of that exchange that is happening. Yeah.
No, Richard, you really touched very key and deep points there. And I would also like to build on that. Just last week or 2 weeks ago, I made a video with a guy who is an expert in migration securities, humanitarian services. He has a background in nursing. He's a scholar. He has now two masters. Like he's really into humanitarian stuff, human welfare and nursing and migration security. And one key point that we talked about is desperation. When you look at the situation of most African countries, it's like everyone is looking for a way to escape because of how bad things are. Whereas on the other hand, still within the same society, you still have people who are just thriving, they're flourishing. I'm not even talking about people like government officials, still just everyday people.
Mm-hmm.
We know of so many unicorns in Nigeria, startup companies doing great for sure. I think where I'm going to now is one, that desperation aspect that people are not fully informed about the opportunities around them. Let's leave the government out of this for just a second. I always have this argument of saying when you look at certain industries in Nigeria where the government do not have any direct interference, they flourish on their own. The tech space, for example, the entertainment industry, Afrobeats did not get to all over the world through the African government. No, it's the people. I think one thing which I see as a positive side and how we can balance the brain drain game would be primarily access to information that people know what is possible for you as an individual. What's also interesting is like just leveraging on what you do, Richard. You travel all over the world. You have meetings, you're doing peace talks, youth development, training on different stuff. And these are things which are being facilitated also by the other part of the world who are, in other words, considered taking the brains from Africa. But somehow they also have impact which they're making back home. It's not always a very balanced conversation. But I think we can rise up to sitting on the table and having a more conversation that aligns with both parties because again it's all about negotiations here. Okay, the ex-chancellor of Germany was in Nigeria last year or so when he was still in power and had some talks with the Nigerian government. It's okay. Nigeria has the strength, has the population, has the brain power and all. It's possible to export talent, resources to Europe, but this can be done with a really good negotiation. How many people are going? How many people do we have back home? So do we have enough to take care of the people? And what do we need to stabilize things? If I'm going to send 10,000 Nigerian doctors abroad, I need to be sure that the quota which is given by the WHO or whichever organization is responsible for this, that this is already set. If we have this type of way, I do believe that every country looks into the kind of resources which they have. And here we're talking about human resource. So what is really missing here is how to optimize the human, resources that we have in Africa. The negotiations are usually not balanced, and everything is left to the hands of everyday individual to negotiate for themselves. And what that results to is desperation because you have no idea whom you're negotiating with, what's the opportunities for you. You just want to take care of yourself and you leave. I had an interesting experience during my master's studies. Towards the end of my defense, my professor told me, Michael, I hope you don't plan to stay back in Germany. I couldn't understand that. He was like, guys like you should not be in Germany. You have to go back and help Africa. You have to go back and help Nigeria. And he was telling me this genuinely, and that's so true. I think if you look at things now, you find out that you have more and more foreign skilled workers in Europe, in Germany, and other parts of the Western world, and way less of them back home. At least for me, And what we're trying to do here is having a way to sensitize people about the information and the cross-border opportunities. Because if you understand that accessing opportunities abroad is not a mystery, if you understand that it's a question of you exchanging your value for something else, if you also understand that you can have a good negotiation power to see that you're not being drained, we can have a balance, then nothing would be too much. Because for every talent which is taken, there is either a replacement or a backup plan back home.
Well, well said, Michael. When you were speaking, you made mention of something about the export of Afrobeat, and that is also the other side of the game aspect of this migration, because the export of Afrobeat was made possible because of the presence, huge population of Nigerians and Africans already living in Europe and America. Because sometimes they want to have their party, they invite these guys, they facilitate the process, all the showbiz arrangement, they handle it. And then when they host nations, have a feel of these guys, they want to have more. And that was how we were able to export it. For instance, now, when footballers are celebrating and they play this music in their dressing rooms, the other players now from the other countries, nations, they listen to this music, it becomes their music. And this is how we've been able to like spread our culture and bring it to the global stage. This is a part of this. Just to mention of something is ensuring balance. For
Yeah.
instance, now, how could you allow about 45 to 50% of your university dons, lecturers and professors resign and travel abroad, and you're not bothered? Was the government sleeping when these doctors were all resigning and leaving? They are okay, they have made, please improve on our pay package. Like you rightly said, Richard, there are doctors in place. They are ashamed. I have one. There's one I know. They don't want to look into your eyes because their self-esteem is low. The work I am doing is less than their own, but they pay their gain is much less than mine. And they can't even be proud of themselves. They are struggling about their rent and basic things. The doctor will not have water to take his bath in the morning to go to work on time. He is battling with what's the fuel, how can and all these basic, I mean, that should not be a problem at all. They are problem for these doctors. And when they cry to government, could you increase, just improve on our pay? It is bad. And like you said, you go to the hospital, even the equipment to work with is not well. And every day patients keep dying in your hands. And you know I can do better than this. You are in an operation and the light goes off. You see what about the solar? They say there's no solar, is there jet? They say there's no fuel, and the patient is dying in your hands. And you know this is traumatizing even as a practitioner and all of these issues. So it's not just about this person wanting to travel really for money. It's a combination of factors. You're
Yeah.
in a hospital and then you hear that bandits came and then they kidnap both patient and doctor and all these stories. So it's not just about maybe money or improved standard of living, but these guys are frankly and genuinely also frustrated. And
Yeah.
what's still is the fact that the government, they don't seem to be concerned about how they feel or the state of things. And which is why before you know, they close their eyes, and as they're opening their eyes, 30% have left, and you are having, and it's terrible. So that's just to further add to what you all have said.
I mean, I totally agree both of you. And again, I had a similar experience with you, Mike, when someone did tell me, "I hope you're not planning to stay back because people like you, your Africa needs you, your country needs you." And I completely agree. In all humility, I think I have competencies that are very relevant to the situations that are here. But then again, as I mentioned earlier, we are making the call. We are calling to the country, but the country is not picking the call. In the sense that sometimes you propose options, you propose things that want to improve the lot of the country, and then you are stuck in so many bureaucratic processes and things that blocks it. And if you have to unblock it, then you need money to unblock that. I don't need money to unblock anything in France where I live, as long as the processes are clear and I follow the processes. I don't need to talk to any lawyer, any somebody somewhere who will go and help me talk to someone who knows someone. So if the
Yeah.
process is seamless, so I can go with it. But when I come here, I'm trying to help the country in all humility, of course. I'm trying to contribute my own quota as someone who has gained skills, who love my country and who wants to contribute. Then I have to go through all the bureaucratic process. Mike, you will be aware that we are currently trying to organize something in Nigeria. The bureaucratic process that goes with that process is a lot. I'm spending almost a month trying to meet government officials to be able to get access to approve something that I'm trying to organize to put Nigeria in the limelight, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
in the future, we will talk about that. But these are like little stuff. Again, the issue is you talk about government closing their eyes and letting skilled worker live, you know. But if they stop them from living, we would also complain, right? Because of
I
course,
know.
skilled
No,
worker
Richard,
here,
what I'm trying to say now
worker
is
here cannot fend for themselves, as we just talked about the doctors. There are so many other professions. I have an example here actually. This is my cousin who does this kind of artwork.
Yeah,
You see
yeah,
it?
that's
yeah,
beautiful.
That's someone who did not go to an art school to be trained. It's just about passion. He started to
Yeah.
draw. He started to look at things, images, and want to put that. He makes really wonderful profile, but he cannot live on it because he
Yeah.
cannot sell this product. I mean, again, Mike. You mentioned something earlier that there are some who are making it, some individuals, not necessarily government officials. I
yeah,
was in Lagos in VI where someone was selling just a little, maybe half of this artwork, and because it's in a high end area, and we went there just like a street market, and we asked how much is that? Oh, 70K. And like the guy just paid without even asking. In Nigeria, we know how to negotiate, but then he's like, 70K. And for this skill is nothing because he came from abroad. He has the means, he could pay. But here is another person who also has similar skills, but because he's not faced in the contest or in the place where he has the audience that can afford it, he cannot make a living with it. So I'm trying to promote his work now to see if I can get him some support and link up to be able to use his skill.
sure.
But if this guy, I promise you, if this guy goes abroad, like out of the country, just 2, 3 artwork will be able to pay his monthly bill. In
Yeah,
just 2, 3 will be able to pay his entire monthly bill, and not to
yeah,
talk of if he does 5, 6, 7 and becomes more professionalized. So you see, when you are in a country that does not valorize your competencies, or even if it valorizes, does not pay you sufficiently enough that equates the level of your competencies or the contribution that you make to that society, you tend to look for somewhere else. And I think where the problem is where there are more skilled people living than more are being trained.
That's very
I
correct.
think it,
I think where the question of how much is too much comes in now.
yeah,
That is
that's
where
where
the
how
question
much
of
is
how
too
much.
much comes in. Yeah, because I
Yeah.
think it's a good thing that we have skilled workers, skilled competencies that are leaving. We can say we are expatriates, we are contributing to developing other countries. That's a good thing for our country. But where the problem is, do we train enough to supplement those who are leaving? Because when they leave, whether you like it or not, there are remittances that come back to the country that helps to develop the country. So those remittances is what is helping. If you look into our GDP, the level of remittances that come is equal to almost
No,
closer after the
as
oil
a matter
revenue.
of fact, Richard, I understand that annually that what the those in diaspora remit, it's about 20 billion. I mean, about $20 billion comes in annually.
It's a huge
Yeah.
chunk of the GDP. So yes,
Yeah.
it's good for the country, but again, it's do we supplement them enough? That's where the how much is too much comes in, because we
yeah,
are not supplementing them enough. I mean, in most of the public schools where you have good medical schools, they are always on strike in one way or the other. So before you
Yeah.
can produce a doctor instead of 6, 7 years, it takes you more than 8 years or sometimes 10 years for one doctor to get out. The same for lawyers and all the other skills. So at the end of the day, the annual rates of turnout for skilled workers that are coming out of the university is not equal to the number of the needs that are there. And even
yeah.
if it's up to the number of the needs that are there, we don't have the capacity to absorb all of them. So they want to go out to find greener pasture for themselves. And that's where the problem comes from. Yeah.
Conversations like this is what always gives me serious thoughts when it comes to what we are doing, not just this conversation, but also Setlinn, platform that we are developing to both inform people about migration and also connect them. Because if you are well informed about the decision that you're about to take, then you are in a position to make the best out of it. If at all nothing, you know exactly what you're going into, what it's going to cost you, and you can plan. One key difference about, say, living in Europe, for example, versus Africa is that to a large extent, you can estimate, you can plan, and you can follow things through. The system and the infrastructure allows you to do that to a large extent. It's not perfect, but it works. Whereas
Yeah.
back home, you have limited information, resources, and just unforeseen circumstances that you have no idea where and how it's going to come. So, to everyone who is watching us across the different media platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, this talk is brought to you by Setlinn. It's a platform that we are developing to see that migration becomes sustainable, that it's not a drain of brains, but rather gains. Because every part has something to offer. It's transactional. What are you bringing and what are you going to get? And each person involved should be able to have the best negotiations for them. Maybe I'm talking too high level. I bring it down. You want to study abroad. You're looking for scholarship. You want to work abroad. You want to do internship abroad. You want to volunteer abroad. You have no idea where to start from. We're building Setlinn for you. Just go to setlinn.com, create an account. If you have no idea where to start from, just ask a question. Say, hey, I am blah, blah, blah. Just explain yourself briefly. What's your qualification? What are you looking for? What we are genuinely doing here is to help you be well informed, because if you're well informed, you won't be desperate anymore. Many times on this show, we've talked about how people get into troubles out of desperation to move abroad and how people think moving abroad is a mystery. It's not a mystery. Yes, it's getting a bit tough now because more and more people want to escape, but then it's only so because people don't understand that it's not supposed to be that way. The embassies receive a lot of requests and they increase the requirements, they extend the appointments, waiting time, and so on and so forth. But we need you to understand that there are multiple routes for you to move abroad. And we genuinely would like to encourage you that your goal should not be to escape. In as much as things are terrible, you can do much more than escaping. I do not visit Nigeria as often as Richard does, but on an average, every week, I spend nothing less than 10 to 15 hours on conversations with colleagues and friends back home. I may not be there physically, but I am still making impact back home. And almost everybody around my circle, my friends, we are giving back. And it's not because we have to in some way, but it's just a natural thing that comes along where you are today. And this is also the vibe and the culture that we want to pass on. So if you're watching us from wherever, sign up on Setlinn, create an account, and help pass this narrative on. It should not be brain drain. Every country should be gaining from the movement of people in and out of their countries.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we must commend the effort of Settling for what Settling is doing to demystify migrations and to make it more accessible to a lot of people. And I think the key is information here. And many people are not succeeding or not able to go beyond their limit because of the lack of information that they have. And I think what Settling is doing is to make that even more accessible in the sense of having one-to-one accompaniment, case-by-case basis, to ensure that people reach their full potential if they have to explore that abroad or somewhere. Again, coming back to the question of migration, I think migration in itself is not bad. Migration is a good thing for any economy, both the receiving and the sending country. What becomes bad is how we balance up and how we manage those situations, either on the both side. And I think as developing country, we still have a lot to do to manage the impact of migration or emigration, as the case may be, and to ensure that there is a return on investment. Investment in the sense that Nigerians are ours, whether we don't invest as we see it in the terms of investment on their development as much as we would expect Nigerians to be invested upon. We have done something for them. And in a way, every Nigerian should be able to give back in a way that they can. And I think sometimes when we have this kind of conversation, we tend always to drift. I'm also a good person to drift towards the government blame. But I also know that in all developed countries, in all developed economy, the driving force is the private sector. The driving force are the private individuals who wakes up and decide that we want to do something. We capitalize on the opportunities that are there. The market force. Nigeria is a big market force. You know, more than 240 million people. There are not many countries in the world like that, but there are
Yeah.
many countries who are far less in numbers than us who are performing really, really well than we do. And I think the private sector can drive this. But where the
Yeah,
problem is the fact that we do not incentivize enough private sector, the entrepreneurs, the diaspora who wants to come back. There's no incentive for them. If I want
Yeah.
to come back, what's the incentive? Why should I come back? What's the
yeah,
added value for me to come back? You know, I recently was contacted by a company, an African-based company, who was asking me if I'll be ready to come back. I said, "What? Of course, I'll be ready to come back as long as there's good conditions, working conditions for me. I don't want to leave a better working conditions to come take up a job here. Or I want to contribute quite okay to developing Africa, to developing my country. But I need to be able to also respond to my own need, you get the point. So I think as a country and as a region, as a continent, we need to intensify the return of diaspora to contribute to their own country. We need to put the necessary framework in place to support those return. When people leave to skill up, they should be ready to come back to contribute. And that means we need to create that enabling environment to receive that.
That's very right, Richard. Let me just paint a picture. I am a family man. I have two sons. Now, maybe I have neighbors. If I don't want those children to go and watch TV in my neighbor's house, I would have to make sure that I have a TV in my house and that there is subscription in it. Basically, this is just basic. Now, like I said, most of these doctors wouldn't have traveled if they have things going well for them back at home, or the lecturers and all that.
Yeah.
From ASU strike to government bringing about ASU rest union. If you have ASU, once the ASU is trying to have a voice, they will go and create another one that will neutralize the impact of ASU. The government spends so much time destroying things than building. When things are going bad, what human beings do is either they fight, freeze, or fly.
Yeah.
Now, when people are faced with these realities, maybe they have tried to fight, they couldn't fight. Should they freeze? It's not an option. So the next thing is to fly. So if I don't have this TV in my house where these children can watch programs that are of interest to them, I can't keep them. So this is just fundamentally the issue. Majority of Nigerians, we love our country so much, but even when they travel, their minds are always back at home and all that. Even when they're adding value there.
Living example.
You almost said that's okay now. So they want to make things work. But let me tell you an instance. I have a background in the non-governmental sector. We got some funds from ECHO, Europe. They wanted to do something in Kaduna State. Now, to get this program started, the fund has been approved. MOU will be signed. To meet with the person responsible was a hell. And they were giving us stringent terms and conditions to be able to provide humanitarian support to troubled communities in Kaduna State. To the point that we were becoming frustrated, to the point that those who were making these funds available were like, you're the one who is hungry, I'm bringing you food. I don't know that, and you're making life difficult for me. So this is the situation. Yes, we know that as citizens we have our fault, but sincerely, to be very sincere with you, everything rises and falls on leadership. And from the fiscal and monetary policies and all that, even if you want to start an investment in Nigeria now, what you will go through, you will start regretting it. So we have to get it right with leadership. And I hold people accountable. Once you get the leadership right, every person good. Talking about skills and transfer of capacity and skills. That was how nations like China came to where they are today. Because there must be migration. Even from the time of from the Bible, God had to even ask some persons, leave, migrate. The likes of Abraham, he said, leave your father's land. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the likes of Jacob, it's a long list. Leave. Asking guys to leave to migrate. So migration is part of human history. So a lot of Nigerians are having this feeling, but when they look at the indicators, and before you do investment, you have to do a risk management. When you do all of these things, you just I think it goes better, I stay back. So you are like Jesus weeping by the side, but not able to enter into the city. Like now, when the president traveled to Japan, they said they have set aside like a city for Nigerians who want to travel in to come in and do whatever they want to do. Nations are opening their lists, but if we should be talking of people immigrating into Nigeria also, like custom, whatever, should be very busy. If the economy is fine. The other day, even in African countries, Ghana was chasing Nigerians out of Ghana. They said Nigeria must leave.
It's kind of funny. It's an irony because it's the same thing we did to Ghanaians years ago.
Yeah. And now, so that's to know how bad things have gone.
To better their own lot. Now we are the one going over there, and now they're doing the same thing to us. Yeah.
Yes, it is so, because $1 to the Ghana city is about 11 Ghana city, 10 the 11 Ghana cities. And $1 to Naira is about 1,500. If you're an investor, when it comes about repatriating your funds, where would you invest? These are the key things. When you look at all the policies, it's like choking themselves. I say you make a policy that you are choking life out of yourself. And one thing about leadership is not your ability to move forward. It's also your ability to move backward, where you can no longer move forward. But you don't have to just hold yourself hostage. And all this is so, these are the facts. So it is brain drain. For instance, now we have somebody who should be working in Nigeria. He travels to Saudi Arabia, and then he's working so much at even not a very good pay. This person is not happy working there. But there are one or two things are working better for him there, and then he just remains there. There are Nigerians also who are working in other countries who are not anyone that should be earning based on their
Yeah.
qualification.
Yeah.
It is also brain drain when you invest. How much you need to invest on a doctor? After training this doctor in Nigerian universities, and then this person leaves, you have lost that the whole of that skill that it is brain drain. When you have invested so much in somebody who studied to the level of professor and then he leaves, all the investment in that person is lost. It becomes drain. That's not gain for us. It becomes gain when you travel to Europe, when you travel to America, when you travel to the Middle East, you acquire these skills and you bring it back home. It becomes a gain. It's
Yeah.
like that. When somebody dies from the earth, it is a loss, but to heaven is a gain.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry to caution. It could be again if you have a space to contribute those skills. It's not
yeah,
about training and coming back home. It's about
yeah,
training and being able to use the training in the country where you're coming to. But when we
yeah,
come back, when these people come back, they don't have the space to exercise their expertise. So we have not gained. We have just acquired some asset that are
yeah,
dormant, and we
yeah, yeah.
don't want dormant assets. We want expertise who can contribute to developing the countries. And for that to happen, you need the necessary conducive environment to be able to
Very good.
exercise. And that's not
Very good.
happening. So we will go out there, get the skill, bring them back. But how do the country gain when they cannot
Yeah.
contribute? On the other hand, when the people migrate, they've gained the skill, they migrate, they're working in that place, contributing. It's a drain to our country, but financially, in terms of remittance, it's also a gain. So, I mean, we need to look at the pros and the cons, right? I'm not saying we should all allow all the skills workers, all the skills expertise to move abroad. We need them back home, but the country needs to put in place a political will to make them to use those skills. I know of a country, I think Portugal, who has recently created a job seekers visa because they
Yeah.
want skilled workers to come into their country. You don't need to have a job. You just need to come and look for the job with your expertise. When you come, you within 1 year you can find something. And that's because they want to develop their own country and they don't have enough expertise. This is a political will that want people to come in to help develop their own country. So they are creating the conditions for it. And they give you even training to help you be able to
I'm
get
sure.
integrated in the society to find it.
Now, no, very sorry. Now, this is where leadership comes in. Now, sometime Michael was talking about the program in Germany. He said on the national budget, they have provisions for migrants on their national
Yeah.
budget. So they have an arrangement for you where you come in, what you can do, and all that. So creating, like you just rightly mentioned, the enabling environment for people to come in.
Yeah.
If people look at the conditions of this, whatever the program they are running, and it's not favorable, they still won't come. So governments who know what to do, they make sure that they answer all the possible questions that intending migrants would want to ask. They ask
Yeah.
themselves,
Yeah.
criticize themselves, and then make these things work. And then they attract the best brains. But now, but even you, like you said, when you travel to other parts of the world, Europe, Middle East, America, and then you acquire these skills, most time to come back, it becomes and make yourself useful. Like you said dormant skills. I think that's the word you use, dormant
Yeah.
skills.
Yeah.
So now, people, how can we improve on this situation? What are the ways forward out of these things? Because these are the issue. What are the realities? What are the ways that we can turn it into gain and less of drain? This is the reality.
Yeah, maybe let me come in here for a second. David, yeah, Portugal, job seeker visa. So there are actually lots of countries in Europe that offer the job seeker visa. It's Portugal, Sweden, Germany, and it's a whole list of them. Germany has even gone even to the extent of including opportunity card visa. So that allows you to get into the country between for up to 6 to 12 months and look for a job. And when you come, there are actually plans and strategies and programs to help you land that job. So if you're interested in that, you could check some information on Setlinn to find out. Coming back now, it's like, oh, now we've listed the problem. What next? You know?
Yeah.
Because we can talk about the problems all day. I like to spend more energy on solutions rather than just trying to dissect the problems because, yeah, you could keep yourself busy in that rabbit hole all your life. When I think about it, it's like, okay, what options do we have? And then in those options that we have, where are we going to invest the least amount of energy or effort and get the best results? Well, we can begin to talk to the government. God knows when anything will change. Or we could also start on maybe a much simpler path. What can we as individuals do? How can we inform people? And I think this is where the whole sustainable migration comes in because it has to be sustainable. Otherwise, then the whole drain comes in. it's sustainable, that as you're going, there's also a plan to give back and how that's going to work, then we talk more about gain rather than drain. I would like us maybe to think about for a second, where do we start from? Imagine a couple of options. People who have not traveled yet. For those ones, it's a lot difficult to begin to tell them about sustainable migration. So I would leave there for a second because it's like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, seriously. So let's leave this for a second and now go to so maybe like people who are already abroad and settled. We know the challenges that they face, and one, the security, there is inconsistency, you cannot plan, blah blah blah. When we list all those things, we ask ourselves again the question: where can we start from? There has to be something. And I am looking on the path of leveraging on some kind of programs or plans that you can have control of. I'm a big fan of doing something digitally because the more on site you do things, the less control you have from your location. And if you're someone who's trying to make impact and you can't control things, then you become easily frustrated. I think just on the constructive path, where I would like to start from would be for people already in diaspora, living abroad, you're settled, you have to begin to ask yourself, how can you start contributing in a way that you will not drain yourself, but you can still make meaningful impact? Because at the end of the day, what is the joy in everything that you've gained if you cannot really give back to some extent? Because I think the wealth of each individual is not measured by how much they have to themselves, but how much other people can benefit from them. I don't have all the answers, but I would think that this would be the right place to start from. And again, we can see some examples within the African space, the Nigerian industry, that have flourished completely independent of government interference to a large extent. If that is possible, then it's also possible here, what we are talking about. How can we
Yeah.
begin to give back gradually but progressively?
Thank you, Mike. I think you did hit the nail on the head. And I did mention earlier also that many of the developed countries that we see around the world are really private sector driven. And I think most of them can also come from foreign direct investment or even individual investment that people are making. And I think the diaspora community have a lot to do. Yes, government have, of course, sufficient role to play in whatever would happen, but I think the key question that every one of us who is living abroad or every one of us who intend to move abroad is, how do I want to give back to my own country? And that
Yeah,
starts by the little contribution that you want to make. Intellectually, you could create a small focus group where you are giving mentorship or advising young people or on how they can do sustainable migration, for example, on
yeah,
how they can develop their skills. I talked earlier about my cousin who did the artwork that I showed in the earlier, for those who are showing it again.
yeah,
you know, I talked earlier about how he can leverage because he's been making so much effort to get this across. And I said there are ways that you could do it. And I started talking to him the Facebook marketplace, the different options of networking where he can showcase his work, who valorize his work, and all that. This is way
yeah,
that I could mentor him a little bit to get him on the business path. The second thing we can do, we can build diaspora networks that kind of support local entrepreneurs in different communities. Yes, you have the skills, you're using it abroad and you're getting paid for it, but you can also say we want to help our own local entrepreneurs to be able to scale. And so build those small networks diaspora network that can contribute in different ways to the skills that are lacking locally. And as you said, Mike, digital is the key. We have many tools now. We don't have to travel as much as I do to come back home, or as much as many other people do to be physically present. But digitally, we have a lot of tools that we can use today to contribute in one way or the other. And then
yeah,
another thing that I think is feasible, but it has to come from a policy point of view, is a kind of fellowship that you do on a short-term basis, or kind of consultancy service that you can offer as a diaspora to contribute to the need gap that we have, or the expertise gap that we have in the country. And we can create those kind of short fellowship where people who are currently abroad can do just on how they can develop or contribute to their own country or to their own continent, in this
yeah,
case, country Nigeria and Africa. But again, even though I still do not agree with the fact that government has a blame for everything, I still think government have all the tools that it has to really, really create an enabling environment for things to better work. As you see from other countries that we cited, Portugal, Germany, Sweden, and the rest of that, who are creating conditions to better the lot of their people by making people coming to work for them to help develop their own economy. And I will leave with the last anecdote. One of the things that I face most time when I travel is the fact that I'm faced with a lot of bureaucratic and administrative bottlenecks that have to succumb because I'm a Nigerian. The simplest explanation they give to me is your country do not have bilateral agreement with us. So I would tend to have to fight all the processes myself because there are no conditions that have negotiated favorable conditions for Nigerians. So each time
Mhm.
you go there, you are met with the harshest conditions possible in terms of
Yeah.
administrative process, and you have to leave it all by yourself. But we have our leaders who travel there back and forth all the time, who sees these things and who can actually ask to meet with the government and see how do we negotiate favorable conditions for our own Nigerians, and to help them to facilitate processes for them. But we don't do that. And so I think that this is a necessary part that we need to go. I think
Yeah. Yeah.
recently they're trying
Mhm.
to launch a kind of training program where they're training skilled workers to send abroad. And I think that's a misplacement of priority. You are an industrial training fund for your country, not an industrial training fund for another country. Why is
Yeah.
good? Because I know there is going to be the remittance that come from sending Nigerians abroad. I think it's also necessary that you begin to identify the skills that are lacking in your own country and train people to fill up those gaps rather than say we want to train people that are employable abroad. You're serving the foreign market and not your own market. So there's no way we can develop our country by just focusing on training skills that are exportable without thinking of training skills that are usable in our own country. And what we do in France, most of the training programs, usually what companies do is they go to the institutions and say, these are the skills we need in our company. Can you train or create courses that respond to this skill gap? And the
Yeah.
university kind of tailored their training to fill up those gaps so that when students leave the school, they are easily employable. But here we
Yeah.
just have one curriculum, it's like that, and there's no branching or there's no modification possible. This is the competency that we offer, and so you just gain that. But then how is those competencies transferable in the job market? We don't think of those. And I think that's what we need to be thinking of the outcome at the end and not just the process. We think of the process, but what is the needed change that we want to gain? So universities must begin to adapt their own curriculum such that they are responding to the needs that we have and not just training just individuals who are filled with knowledge but without skills. So we need to be able to readapt those perspectives in terms of formation that we offer. And that's the only way I think that we can solve the knowledge gap, the skill gap in our country to be able to develop. And when we create those enabling environment, then we can have more people who wants to come. Of course, all the other issues about insecurity and the other things that need to be solved is there. But if we begin to do little by little, I think we can get somewhere. And to
Yeah.
conclude, I would say the challenges would always be there, even in the developed country that we have given really good examples about. There are always challenges as well. But then when you look at the advantages that come with them, then you see that, okay, the advantages outweighs. And in the case of Nigeria, I think the advantage here is the number. We've got the numbers, we've got the market force. So if we're able to capitalize on the competencies that we have, we would be able to scale very easily. And so I think there is that advantage of scaling that we
Yeah.
can leverage upon. So when you think of investing in Nigeria, when you think of coming back and giving back to Nigeria, think of the massive scaling opportunity that you could have. I mean, that could outweigh all of the insecurity issues that you might face at the end. Of course, I'm not saying take it for granted. You must watch your back as well. But then there are advantages that you can gain investing in our country, Nigeria, or in Africa as a whole.
100%.
So those abroad can continue to do things like this. In addition to the tech stuff, you can improve on facilities at home. You can come to the general hospital or is it the teaching hospital you to go and say what is lacking here. You need solar installation. There's no power here. Okay, send funds, make arrangement, and make sure that the funds are rightly used. You install solar there or alternative power supply in that place. You can come to
Mhm.
the lab and stuff like that can see happen to improve on the medical situation in that area. It could be education, it could be medical, it could be the tech industry. But again, there is a lot that we can still do as community of presence from certain states, from certain local governments, like Excellence of St. Francis College. We are coming together, we are bringing ourselves together and do things like this. I think there are things that we can do for our alma maters, for our communities where we are coming from. These are things that we can still do to better the Lord and not necessarily coming back or investing millions. the little that
Yeah.
we do can go a long way also. That's it from me, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Michael. It's good to say that. I also think that, in, in fairness to the diaspora, we are doing a lot of that, and many of us are already contributing in this way. But I think it's not sufficient in the sense
Yeah.
that you could contribute, but you don't have the necessary structure to make sure that your investment is protected. If you build a school today, come back in 5 years, that school will be destroyed. Why? Because there are no structure in place to ensure that people maintain those structures. There are no maintenance policies in place, and these are not things I would put my money and then still put my money
Yeah, I
if.
think for what you're saying, you just to work on the structure. Let it be
So
better structure. And
the
just improve on
structural
the
part
structure.
is still necessary. The structural part is still necessary, and government has a role to play in that part. That's one. Two, I think also you talked about the diaspora community teaming up together. I'm doing a lot of projects with Mike. Mike is based in Germany and based in France, and we are doing a lot of things together. You were here in Nigeria. We're doing a lot of stuff with you. I mean, collaborating on a lot of stuff, and I think those kind of collaborations can continue. Those kind of
100%.
return on investment from those of us who are abroad would continue, but I think we need to scale.
Richard, thank you so very much for joining us. It was
It's been a pleasure.
impromptu. I just jumped on you yesterday and you said yes. I appreciate it
No,
that you're always pulling up every time I reach out to you. And I'm hoping that we can also extend this vibe to other people in diaspora. And then let's see, little contribution, slow but gradually. I think we will make progressive impacts that we will also see and be very happy about.
thank you,
Yeah.
Mike, and the two Mike, of course, for the opportunity. It's really an important topic that we cannot exhaust, and I think we should continue to talk about it. Be you abroad or at home, I think we all, as individuals, have competencies that we can contribute to develop our country, and we should continue to do that. And if you go abroad, since we are talking about brain drain or brain gain, we should be able to use the gain that we have to contribute in one way or the other to developing and bettering the lot of our continent. And I think if we have a better developed continent, it will be good for all of us. So, yeah, I think we all have that capacity and we should not give up on the country. We should not give up on the continent. We can make it better for us and for the generations yet unborn. So, thank you.
Yes, for our viewers, can we know what is the situation in your country, in Ghana, in Senegal, in South Africa? Where are you watching us from? What is the situation in your country? What's the balance like? Do you still have enough doctors, enough lecturers and professors in your schools? Is it a gain or drain? And in your opinion, how much is too much? And so it's all about striking the balance. And it's always a pleasure having Richard on this show and Michael for all you're doing and for Setlinn. I can say thank you enough, and we'll do it again next weekend. Yeah.
Cheers. Bye bye for now.
Yes, everyone. Bye bye.